Welcome everyone. I'm Bryn and I'm the host of the Bryn's Way channel. And we're going to be talking about the supply chain disruptions due to COVID-19. I have three guests today that have unique perspective on the supply chain. Each is going to give a little on their experience as we try to determine whether we are going to have disruptions. I have my daughter, Kayla, whose background is farming. If you could just wave, Kayla, so they'll know that's you. My good friend Susan, who works as a manager in caregiving, if you could wave. And her daughter Ashley, who has a military perspective, and we're not sure if she's going to be able to come on or not, but she's on hold, and if she can come on, then we'll get her perspective. And we'll start with Kayla. And so Kayla, with your experience in farming, what is your perspective on the supply chain?
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about was like for people to understand that a lot of farmers don't make a lot of money. The mass majority of our food does come from kind of smaller local farmers who's and livestock owners who are selling their cattle to feedlots, into packing plants, into sale barns, which is where packers come and buy up the cattle, and then they take it and then they pack it up, and that's where they packaging facilities are what take the meat to the grocery stores. I didn't come from a farming background, I'll say that first, but I'm married to a farmer who's grew up in the farming industry his whole life, and we've been married for a little over 6 years. And so
and you a lot of farmers on the farm. Sorry to talk over you, but you actually live on the farm.
Yeah, and my husband manages a large farm in Texas currently, and we so we just kind of, we've had our own cattle and stuff before, and so we kind of know what goes on a little bit, even though I'm not an expert at all. And a lot of farmers are in debt quite a bit. Like they use loans from the banks, and then that's how they pay and buy their cattle or pay for their equipment. I mean, a combine can cost like $1 million, you know, it's a lot of cash that they need. And so whenever there's a disruption and farmers and ranchers are having to get rid of crops and slaughter cows, then they're losing money. And so that just causes a disruption in their ability to, and they're not already making a ton of money, and they have to pay back their loans at some point. So, now, the reason why I wanted to talk about why I've asked my husband why this is happening, like why farmers are just burying tons of crops and why they're slaughtering cows, is because there's not enough demand currently. When you think about schools and restaurants closed, they use a lot of the demand, and while there's more demand in the grocery store, it's not as much of a demand as what schools and restaurants use. And then so it causes like a delay in that these packaging plants have more cows than there is to buy the meat, the packing plant. So they're just slaughtering cows because there's like really not anywhere to go with it currently. But then what happens is then it creates this, what my husband refers to as like a blip in the supply chain. So then it causes like, so I think my husband suspects that prices could go up to double, like on milk and meat and dairy and all that stuff, because there's being so much wasted right now. But then we're gonna have this blip in the supply chain, and then it's going to cause there to be food shortages in the grocery store. So he heard on a radio station, it's called KFRM, and that there's an average, most ranchers are losing about $250 per head of cattle. And so my husband was saying, well, an average like small guy would probably have 180 head, so that would be a loss of about $45,000. If you had a little bit larger of a herd of 500, that would be $125,000 loss is what is average right now. So that's kind of my perspective on the what's going on right now in supply chain.
So just a quick question. So you said that the kids are out of school,
Yeah.
and so there's not that demand, but the kids will be at home, so
Mhm.
they will still be eating. Do you have any idea why that's a?
Well, so I've thought about this too, and the reason I've kind of thought about that is I think that if you ever think like for the majority of people when they are eating out or eating at home, they're probably not necessarily eating lots of fruits and vegetables, cooking big meals. They're probably eating more processed foods, packaged foods. Restaurants and schools are known to waste a lot as well. And also you have to think about like schools. There's government assistance too, I think, in providing meals for people who can't afford it. So there's millions, I can't remember the exact number, but there's millions and millions of food insecure people in America. So how do we know how many people are going hungry right now?
It's like 1 out of 5 kids,
Yeah.
or something like that, or 1 out of 6.
Yeah, and then just think about when you go out to a restaurant, they're using more ingredients in probably your typical meal you cook at home. And then again, there's a lot of waste as well. And then people probably maybe aren't just spending as much money on buying their own groceries as they would when they go out or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay, so Susan, do you want to give like your perspective from the caregiving? And I know you have lots of other perspectives that you may want to share too, but that's one of the big ones we want to hear about today.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, just being in the caregiving industry, naturally, I'm taking care of the population that's considered the most vulnerable. Um, I've had problems just as being a private caregiver and being able to order the just normal supplies that we use on a daily basis, so that we can keep the sanitary process up like we should. We've had to improvise by using reusable, like dishwashing gloves and that sort of thing, just to be able to transfer her and take her to the bathroom and do showers, because we don't have regular medical gloves that are accessible to us, because those are held up for just the hospitals itself.
Who are you ordering from, by the way? Can you tell us
Well,
that?
yes, it's I normally order from Amazon, and the reason is because they have so many different suppliers that I can, go down the list, and I have more of a chance of getting some of the supplies in. I placed an order probably 6 weeks ago, and I'm still waiting for gloves and bed pads and that sort of thing to come in. So that's been a major issue. Another issue is that because of the shutdown, I'm not able at this point to hire new employees to be able to pick up hours for my client who needs 24-hour care. So this means that I'm stepping in, and the other caregiver that's on board is working a lot of hours as well. She's probably pulling 60 hours, and I'm working 110. And, until this lifts and until we can get back to some normalcy without her family naturally is afraid to bring anybody new in, not knowing what their exposure is, for sure. That there's kind of no break for the current caregivers in place, to have any time off. So we're working every day. It can be pretty exhausting, and on top of that, you have people. Once we do get to the hiring process, I don't know how many candidates we'll actually get, just for the fact that people are afraid to work for somebody who's that vulnerable and who has, a possibility of higher risk at catching the COVID-19 virus than, what they consider people that can handle it with their immune system.
Right. So you can't have a lot of people coming in and out from outside.
No, she's definitely, and it's something that she's missing quite a bit. I can tell you, is the physical touch and stuff from her grandchildren and her children. She almost begs for it. She doesn't get to see them very much. We did have an Easter celebration, but we had to keep it outside, and everybody had to stay away from her. So it's been very difficult emotionally, especially for the elder population, where that's kind of all that they live for. That's all they have is their
Right.
loved ones and the affection that they get from them. So it's affected her quite a bit, in the mental aspect as far as that goes.
I think that's affected just about everybody.
Yeah, it has.
Big fan, yes.
Yeah, and her daughter also has a nonprofit, and right now they're doing a fundraiser to feed 40 local families that are very low income. And although the schools can help, they don't. They're doing food deliveries right now, where they're going door to door, and they're teaching them also how to grow their own food to help them learn to be more, self-sustainable. But in the process, they're delivering. They pick 40 families in their area, and people are donating for that. And they're doing, 3 meals a day for each family, and they want to carry that on for at least 8 weeks to get through the duration of the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were involved with the nonprofit for a while. Are you still involved with that?
I did do some volunteer work for her, and I still do occasionally. Um, Now it's just mainly like back end support, and I donate where I can, and especially when it's a good cause like that. It's feeding people that they don't have incomes right now. Their electricity's not shut off in Delray or anything like that, but they're going to have to. It's just accumulating. So when we go back online, they're going to be required to back pay all of that, and they don't even have jobs right now. The unemployment in Florida, I think the approval rate was between 6 and 9%. So there's a lot of people out there that aren't getting anything, and that they're not able to even provide the bare necessities for their family right now.
So are you seeing a lot of people personally that have lost their jobs?
I'm seeing a lot of on the local news. They really dig into families, and
Yeah.
like, yeah,
But you
they're
personally, do you know very many people personally that's lost a job in your area?
I know several people that have lost a job, and including people that are that had six-figure incomes that are no longer, not working right now. And you got to think about one person in particular. She is a family member of my client. Um, she had a six-figure income, and she commuted back and forth from Orlando is where she works. So her job was put on hold, and she has resorted to delivering food for a restaurant just to try to make some tips. And it's not coming anywhere close to what her bills come out to, and being able to sustain themselves in that way. So she's having to um, make decisions on what she's going to pay, and first and foremost is feeding her family, and then second comes everything else. I know that their bills have fallen by the wayside because of that. And you think about somebody with an income and at that level, and no amount of money that the government is going to give is going to be able to allow her to fully pay all her bills.
Yeah.
So
Well, I know we're going to try to stick to supply chains, but I do want to add to that is that I heard that the city governments and stuff, that they are hurting financially from so many job losses, and their revenue is not good, which a lot of them have overspent and their budgets are terrible anyway. But
right.
I heard that up to 1 million people may be losing their jobs just in city workers and government, city and state workers. So
I also wanted to mention that I know several people who've lost their jobs. Well, for one thing, I have a friend who owns or co-owns a bar, and they're hoping that they can even stay open. I also we're trying to sell our house, and I know Ashley was actually messaged me talking about the moving and selling market is hard as well. They lost their jobs, and so we weren't able to sell our house because they weren't able to buy it because they lost their jobs. My husband works with someone whose wife lost their job, and this is a reason too why the packing plants aren't staying open. To get back to the supply chain thing that I didn't mention earlier, it's that President Donald Trump, he put in an executive order for packing plants to remain open. However, employees aren't wanting to come in because of COVID, and so they aren't just coming to work. So he actually heard on the radio that there's farmers and other people actually coming into these packing plants to help. So I guess basically people are volunteering to come in and help, just to keep somewhat of a flow going. because of other people who aren't wanting to come in. And so I asked my husband, I was like, well, why aren't, they hiring? And what Susan mentioned about not being able to hire new people, it kind of made me think if that's why, part of the reason why the packing plants aren't able to hire more people is, for one, two, you already have employees who, with COVID going on, you probably just can't fire people because they're not coming in because they're afraid to get coronavirus, as well as, there's just a lot of things that go into, hiring and firing of people. And so you can't just say, well, if you're not going to come in, you're going to get fired. And so that's also causing a staffing issue in that arena as well.
So that was the Defense Production Act that Trump signed, that forcing them to stay open, the packing plants.
Right.
And I did want to say one thing about the Crime Act, and I've seen some information about that, and that's where it gives the farmer the ability to actually sell his beef directly to the public, I believe, or locally, like, so they can do it basically more themselves. So anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know a ton about that.
Yeah, so the reason that is that basically there's federal regulations that go into that. They don't want just, basically, as a small farmer, okay, if I have my own cow, I can't go into these local butchering facilities and then butcher and then just sell it to anybody, because they want to be able to, the federal government wants to be more in the process of that we get to manage and regulate what meat goes out to the general public. So you can butcher it for your own use and maybe friends and families or whatever. So everything that you get from a local butchering facility says not for resale. So what that article was mentioning was to allow, once it goes to these local butchering facilities, to allow them to actually sell to the general public. And so that would be really helpful. That's one thing that we talked about, is that it needs to get away from these just huge Tyson, packing plants and all that stuff, and get back more into local markets and smaller facilities, because what we were saying, let the free market to take place. If a butchering facility, it's kind of like a restaurant, that they should be able to distribute, and if a problem comes into that butchering facility, then it's that butchering facility is going to be responsible for,
Right.
not taking care or proper sanitation measures or whatever.
Plus, if they had the smaller facilities, we wouldn't have as much spread of the virus,
Yeah.
We wouldn't have as many people, and that would be good too. So hopefully that'll happen. That has not happened so far.
Yeah,
I don't think that they will let it happen personally, just because the government, like they was saying, they want to be in the process, they want to be relevant. And
and currently I think it had a pretty small number of supporters of representatives and stuff. Yeah.
So I'm sure there's a big support among the farmers.
Yes.
No support in the government.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, Susan, just your local, what have you seen on the shelves in your markets?
We still don't have toilet paper. Paper towels are very, very scarce. Fortunately, if you support the local restaurants and you buy takeout, they're nice enough to allow you to buy 6 rolls of toilet paper from them, even though they come individual. It's nice that they get from big distributors. So when we're running low on toilet paper now, we just place a to-go order and they put some toilet paper in there for you. I mean, we have to pay for it, but
yeah. I thought you were going to say you're using their napkins.
Yeah, it's a good way to improvise.
That's funny.
Well, that's good. Toilet paper is much better than a napkin.
Yeah.
Okay, so my perspective, I do the office management for a small construction company, and me and my husband actually operate. Anyway, our business is doing well. We had a slight slowdown for maybe just a couple of weeks, and then things have picked up. Don't see any problems there. As a matter of fact, it's gotten very busy recently. And that could be due just to the amount of money that is being pumped into the economy, but we don't know for sure. I mean, there's still a big lag in when things, when people lose jobs to when they will actually come into more of the housing market and stuff. So we may have just a lag. And we did call also some supply chains that we work with on a regular basis. You know, we get those supply, like a lot of supplies from them. And they said that they had, you know, some slowdowns for a little while, or, you know, like trouble getting stock for a while, but they've gotten that worked out. They're having problems mostly with staples. I can't remember what the other thing. I think it's something was to do with metals, but they wound up, I guess, getting another supplier, so they're fine now. So hopefully that'll continue, that we won't have any disruptions there. So I basically am on the fence as to how much disruption we're going to have. You know, Trump did sign that to, you know, basically where they have to stay open, you know, the packing plants, and I'm not seeing anything too major here. You know, there is in the stores here, I didn't look at the toilet paper. I forgot to do that. The meat was pretty sparse. But it was a store that I don't normally go into. It's a subsidiary of Winn-Dixie Harvey's. And so I'm not used to being in that store, but even their shelves and stuff looked a little sparse, and you know, like empty spots, quite a bit. But you know, they had, like I went to get baking soda, there was only one. So I got the last baking soda, the name brand it is. But anyway, so that's about it. I think we're actually running close on time, so it's running out of time. We're the 40-minute time limit.
It just said it gave us unlimited minutes.
Oh, so we got unlimited minutes?
Ashley,
oh, no.
I think, is able to come on, and she was talking about a military perspective, but just Mom, you can kind of help guide her. And like, she wasn't sure about, she messaged me about if we want to keep on topic with supply chains, about there were several things.
We would definitely we want to hear about anything that you know about the supply chains from a military perspective and what you're seeing locally. And if you have anything else to add, you're welcome. So we'd love to hear it.
Okay, am I gonna pop up on screen? Did I pop up?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm glad you made it.
I'm definitely looking like a homebody right now. But so it's been pretty interesting. You would think with the military community and being a community, which I know that Brenda and Wade, you guys are familiar with this to some extent too. It's designed so that you become heavily reliant on the military community, and that's the PX, that's the commissary, that's healthcare. And the problem with that is they're struggling to get supplies as well. They've also gone down to limiting what families can buy, and it doesn't matter on your household size. A lot of these families have 5 kids. I mean, I know quite a few people that have 3, 4, 5 kids, and they're still limited to the same amount of supplies that I can buy, which I find to be kind of counterproductive, just because if they need a certain amount to meet the household demand that they have, now they're being forced to go out into public more to try to get some of the supplies that they need, or the amount of supplies that they need. So I find that to be a little counterproductive, but it's due to the backup of the supplies that are in store. They would rather multiple families have a little bit than some families to go without. So I do get it, but I do think that that's a big issue going on right now with the supply. I will say that we're not out of toilet paper. There's been several people that have actually tried to go back and return their toilet paper and get refunds.
Do you seriously know somebody that did that?
I do, yeah. So, yeah, so we have some people here that hoarded. They were trying to hoard and attempted to get a refund from the store on the toilet paper.
They tried to return the toilet paper.
Right. So what they ended up doing instead was they went in, there's quite a few Facebook groups for military spouses or people here in Fort Benning, and they just posted in there, and they were able to donate some, if I remember correctly. They were able to donate some, but then some people did buy from them as well. Just because with the initial scare, I think everybody was kind of panic buying. I'm glad that we weren't among that. And then very shortly after, I would say like a week, maybe not even 2 weeks after, people were realizing that they really didn't need some of the stuff that they were panic buying. I can say as far as the military healthcare, it's been pretty difficult here. And I guess that would be a supply of personnel. It takes anywhere on average from 6 to 8 months to get a job in the military hospitals through the government hiring process. And you
so
can,
those are not military nurses, they're civilian nurses and doctors then.
right, exactly. So this is civilian personnel that work in the hospital, people that we rely on, a lot of doctors and things of that nature. And they're severely understaffed right now because of how long it takes to hire somebody to get into a federal position like that. The average is about,
Are they seeing a lot of cases of COVID?
so we actually, here in Fort Benning, they did post an order. They weren't allowed to report how many cases we were getting, but Fort Benning was the first to get cases here in the local area. And this is Columbus, Georgia. So we're in the Fort Benning area. I guess, what would it be called? Like West Georgia-ish, kind of. We're about 3 hours.
Midwest.
Right.
Midwest.
So we were, Fort Benning was the first to get cases of COVID, and I think we had about 5 or 6 cases before we had a case coming from a non-military personnel. The entire thing sparked off in Columbus with a retired military member's wife had traveled out of the country and come back. And the first 2 cases that we got were military spouses. So it was a retired military member and then an active duty military member. And it's been a little crazy. We've had to set up entire barracks on post just for quarantine purposes, which my husband was a large part of. His unit was involved in that. But as far as the healthcare goes, I was just telling Kayla not that long ago, just a few moments ago, that there's services that I need in the healthcare industry, things to get checked out, and I'm forced to wait months to even get those services because they want to reserve personnel and they want to reserve the hospital workers for the COVID-19 situation. And, you know, which is really detrimental because then we're not getting healthcare services that we need to take care of ourselves, which is adding to the problem.
I've heard that they've actually furloughed one of my cousins that lives in West Virginia. Her hospital by her furloughed 1,000 employees, nurses and doctors. I don't know if they're doctors, nurses, CNAs, you know,
Right.
that hospital furloughed 1,000. That is
Exactly.
Actually, I posted where like there was a hospital that furloughed like 700, and she's like commented on it and was like, my hospital did 1,000. I was like, that's crazy. So I don't know about our local hospitals here in Jacksonville. I haven't taken the time to really find out or try to find out if they're furloughing anybody, but I think that's across the board because, you know, well, not other than like the hot spots like maybe New York, yeah, they're not, they've stopped all of the, what they call it, oh goodness.
Elective surgery.
Elective surgeries, thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're stopped all the elective surgeries, so yeah, they're slow. They don't have anybody to, yeah, and the hospitals actually, from my understanding, this one hospital, they said they were going to lose like $23 million a month from furloughing or, you know, not having any elective surgeries and, you know, the hospital not running. So we may have some problems in the chain of healthcare. You know, we may lose some hospitals.
Yeah, I saw a post just yesterday, 2 days ago, a microbiologist coming on and saying how people who have other diseases and disorders, whether it be heart disease or whatever, are not, people aren't coming in because they're scared to get the coronavirus, so they're not coming in when they maybe need to, as well as the second reason is that, like Ashley says, that they're not providing services for these people because they want to keep their supplies and rooms and all that stuff available. Yeah, for COVID. So he was talking about when we look at everything and just say COVID, 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 then we're like neglecting this other large part of the population and issue.
Yeah.
Right. And I would say that's a really hard thing that we're dealing with. And that kind of came back to, I guess, like my main point in the supply talk that we're having is that with the military community, we've become so reliant on government resources, which includes our healthcare, our commissary, our PX, things like that, even moving because we're selling our house and trying to move back to Florida. It's been pretty chaotic because they've stopped all PCS moves. With the healthcare.
What's PCS stand for?
It's the permanent change of station. So basically my husband will be getting out of the military, completing his service, and we're moving back home. because we will no longer be a part of the military. And because they have stopped all of their military contractors from moving, now we have to scramble and try to find other options to move our household goods. We currently have them in storage, so we're having to pay monthly for storage. And with the healthcare, the way that they've designed it, pretty much like any other type of health insurance, we cannot be seen off post and have it covered financially unless we have a referral. The problem is it's very difficult to get referrals right now because it's very difficult to get a regular appointment because they've stopped all of that due to the COVID situation. So whereas if I had a different type of healthcare, I may be able to look at different hospitals or clinics to go to. I'm forced to go to one clinic that is not offering services because of the healthcare that I have through our military service. And so it's very limiting in our options, and there's just no supply for the demand that's here as far as healthcare goes.
Okay, well, I hate to cut it off because I know there's tons more to talk about, but we've made this very long. So it's
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that was good.
yes. So thank you everybody that's watching, and I hope you subscribe to the Brinsway channel, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you.
All right.